Gittin, Daf Yomi Gittin, Daf Yomi asking the right questions, b'ma'amad shloshtam. Einstein's reputed to have said that if he was given an hour to solve a problem on which his life depended, he would spend the first 55 minutes deciding what the right question was to ask, and the next 5 minutes answering the question. As we have in Chazal, Migdal Oz says in Hilchos Tshuva, in Perek Hei of Hilchos Tshuva, She'elat chacham chatzi tshuva. Question of a wise person is already half the answer. The art lies in asking the right question. In learning, in lomdus, that's critical, is being able to ask the question correctly, to be able to formulate, to identify the issues sufficiently well, to be able to ask what we call a powerful question, a question that is really, really strong. And we get a bit of an insight into how to do that in learning and how not to do that in learning from the Ktsos HaChoshen. The Ktsos HaChoshen we've spoken about before, Rabbi Lapin, that's the end of that wonderful period, the end of the 18th century, period of the Vilna Gaon, the Ktsos, the Nesivos, just a wonderfully productive period of Torah literature, of Torah thought, and very professional, very powerful. And the Ktsos HaChoshen, written in Choshen Mishpat, only on one section of the Shulchan Aruch, has become, already then until today, the textbook of methodology, of lomdish methodology, how to be a Lamdan. If you want to be a Lamdan, you've got to learn Ktsos HaChoshen. If you're not learning Ktsos HaChoshen, or you haven't learned Ktsos HaChoshen, it's very difficult to understand what learning is, how to learn, methodology. We use the Ktsos HaChoshen even in Psak, in the Choshen Mishpat. We will sometimes use the Ktsos HaChoshen in Psak. Ktsos HaChoshen was a rov and a posek, in addition to being such a lamdan. He also wrote the Shev Shmaitzer, which we use a lot, which is the whole analysis of Sveikot and how to deal with Sveikot. But the Ktsos HaChoshen is just one of the most fundamental textbooks of lomdisha methodology ever written, and certainly in modern times. And in dealing with an aspect of our sugya, the Ktsos HaChoshen gives us an approach to how to ask these intelligent questions, the right questions. And the sugya in itself is very interesting because it's a very innovative principle of Chazal, where Chazal innovate a financial instrument to facilitate market efficiencies. So one of the market efficiencies which Chazal innovated already before that time was the tradability of debt, which the secular world only got to know about relatively recently, that you can trade debt. If you owe me money, I can sell the right to claim that money from you to a third party, and that enables an efficiency in the market. But traditionally, the method of selling and trading in debt required a document. You had to trade a written instrument. What the Chazal innovate in our Gemara here is the idea of ma'amad shloshtam, which is a method of being able to trade in debt and transfer debt even without documentation. To be able to do it, just to be able to do it, which means you can do it in an instant, which increases enormous efficiency in the markets and encourages people to lend and to borrow, and that way for the economy to thrive. The Gemara says on Daf Yomi Bet, Gufa Omar Rav Huna Amar Rav, Manali biyadecha. If a man says, you owe me 100, Taneyu leploni, instead of paying the 100 back to me, pay the 100 to Reuven. Reuven wants to borrow 100 from me. So the 100 that you've got, instead of paying back to me, give it to Reuven, and now Reuven will owe me the money, you won't owe me. You owe Reuven will owe me. B'ma'amad shloshtan kanai, if that's done in the presence of all three, if all three are present when that's done, I'm there, you there, and Reuven is there. And I say this, it's unilateral. I just say it, nobody has to agree. And once it's said, kana means nobody can pull back from it. It's completely binding. Now, we've had cases where words can be completely binding. We've just finished with Nozir and with Nadorim, and it's all based on Hekdesh, isn't that so? Where I can give something to Hekdesh just using words. I can say this object belongs to Hekdesh, belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. Those words actually transfer the ownership from me to the Beis HaMikdash. So we see there are cases where words alone can affect a transfer, but this is a particular case of Ma'amad Shloshtam where the words alone can affect the transfer. The Gemara then goes on to tell Ma'arov, Mistavra milta derav befikadon. There are two ways that we'll consider by which the money might have come into your hands in the first place. Why do you owe me money? There could be two possibilities. I lent you money, or I gave it to you as a pikadon. I deposited money with you for safekeeping. So I might have given you a suitcase full of $100 bills, and I ask you, please keep this safely for me until I come back or whatever it is, and then you'll give it to me. So that's the one way. That's called pikadon. The other way is halva. I might have lent you the money and you owe me the money as a loan. The difference between pikadon and halva is very important. If I lent you the $10,000, then you're free to spend that on whatever you want. You owe me $10,000, but you can use the money to do it. You can gamble, you can go on a cruise, you can do whatever you want with the money. I have no right to dictate to you what to do with the money. A loan is given to be spent. You can invest the money. You owe me money, but you don't owe me those same $100 bills that I gave you. You owe me the value. But if I gave you a pikadon, you have to give me back what I gave you. You don't have the right to spend or to use that money. It has to be given back to me as that's a pikadon. Says Rava, mistavra milta de Rav befikadon. Rav makes sense if the way you got the money is as a pikadon. So I gave you a suitcase full of $100 bills and said, hold on for this to me till I get back. I'm now back, and I say, instead of giving it back to me, give it to Reuven. Aval b'milveh lo. But it doesn't make sense with milveh. You owe me money and now somebody else becomes your creditor, and it's just unilateral. I borrowed money from you because I like to deal with you. I know you're not going to oppress me. I know you're not going to push me. You're not going to be hard on me. Now all of a sudden you've told me to pay the mafia. The mafia now has a claim on that money. I don't want to be in their hands. That wasn't part of the deal. So b'milveh, it's a bit difficult to understand v'hailokim, but by God, Omer Rav afilu b'milveh. You know what? Rav said it even with milveh. That's how far this law goes. Itmanami, we also learned, Mashmur, Mashmed Levi, milveh li biyadcha, taneyo lo leploni. Levi said it specifically in the case of a milveh. If I say, you owe me money, give it to Reuven, b'ma'amad shloshtan kana. The time am I? How does this work? Why is this possible? How does this work? Says Rashi, V'tamamai b'milveh kana. That Rashi is very important for us. Says Rashi, the Gemara is asking, why does it work in the case of milveh? Not why does it work at all. Why does it work in the case of milveh, in a loan? Implying pikadon, I understand why it works. Easy to understand that it works in pikadon. But in milveh, I need to understand why does it work. Haleta be'enet lekanye. In the case of milveh, the money that I gave you is not there. You've spent it already. Yes, you owe me, but what do you have to give? How does this kinyan work? On what does this kinyan work? So the Gemara goes on to say, Ela Omar Marzutra, but Marzutra said on the top of Yudalad Amud Bet, Hanit lat mili, there are three things, Shavinu Rabbanon kihilchete beloy taima, that the Rabbanon have legislated as a halacha without a reason. You've got to treat it, says Rashi, like halacha l'Moshe Misinai. You don't ask questions about it. There's no why. That's how they did it. There are three areas, and this is one of them. This is the one, v'idach, and another two. Explains Tosfot, the issue is not why did the Rabbanon make this law. The reason the Rabbanon made this law is to facilitate trade, to make finance efficient. You don't have to be an Ilui to understand why they made the law. That's not the Gemara's question. And the Rosh says that also very, very clearly. A person buys money, a trade, and he doesn't have the money to pay. So he arranges, he said, you'll claim that I now owe you $100 for the goods I've bought from you. You can claim it from Shimon. He owes me money, you can claim it from him. That way we can make some quick deals and we can act quickly without having to go through the whole process, and debt can be transferred and debt can be traded. So that's not what the question is, says Tosfos. So what is the question? Let's learn the Ktseis HaChoshen. So the first paragraph of the Ktseis HaChoshen, he's quoting the Gemara. V'nira l'chore miloshen Rashi degabi pikadon nicha betama. It appears from the Rashi that we learned that there's no issue, there's no question about what the reason is in the case of pikadon. If you got the money for me in safekeeping, I understand that I can say to you, give it back to so-and-so instead of to me. The kinyan works on this parcel of money which you're holding. The truth is, even for a pikadon, you need a reason. There's a reason for it. The Tosfot and the Rosh say the reason for this halacha is to facilitate trade, that you won't have to make kinyonim and get eidim and write shtoros, the documents. You can just trade in debt. What we don't have the reason for is how does it work? So now there's a difference between why did they legislate? That's easy. Look, there's always a reason why the Chachomim legislate. But what's the mechanism? How does it work? But on the other hand, that's also a silly question. How does the kinyan work? Because many places, there are many kinyonim that the Chachomim make. They make it, they say it will work. There doesn't have to be a mechanism. Is it any worse than a sutimta? At the bottom, I bring the Choshen Mishpat from the Shulchan Aruch from Siman Reish Aleph, where we have the din of a sutimta. So in the diamond trade, for example, there is certainly used to be a custom that if you shake hands, that's a deal. Is that a kinyan? Does that work in halacha? So the answer is yes. Once the traders have adopted a specific kinyan, even though it's not a kinyan in Shulchan Aruch, once the trade adopts a kinyan, that becomes a valid kinyan in halacha as well. So the Shulchan Aruch specifically says a handshake or whatever people use. Yeah, they give you a penny or something just as a gesture. So we have a situation like that where even though the mechanism is not a halachic mechanism, Chazal say it works. It works to facilitate trade. So here too, why are we asking how this works? That's not a clever question. It works like any other takanos chacham. The chachamim said it works, so it works. V'im ken mipikadon lo kashe da'kivan sheyesh tam detakana tu lo kashe ma'itay mekana kamo de lo kashe al sha'ar kinyanei derabon kamo meshicha ba'agav. Once you understand there's a reason for the legislation, you don't have to know how it works. So by pikadon, you don't even ask the question. So if you got the money from me in safekeeping and I tell you to give it to Reuven, why did the Chachomim say that works to facilitate trade? How does it work? Who cares? The Chachomim said it works. That's it. But for milveh it is a good question. And that's what I want to focus on for a moment. Why is it a good question if you got the money as a loan, but it's not a good question if you got the money as a pikadon? Because the money is not in my control. If I gave it to you, I gave you a suitcase full of money and I said, keep this for me, that means the suitcase, you don't touch it, you don't open it, you leave it, you put it in your safe and you give it back to me when I come. So that's birshutei. You've got it, you've got mastery over it, you've got control over it, and through you I've got control over it. So I can say that suitcase, which is in your house, in your safe, that suitcase, give it to Reuven. And even though it's a good kinyan, I understand that you can say it. The Chachomim said it's a kinyan, but it's not birshutei. How can you have a kinyan when the person who has to transfer it doesn't even have it? He's spent it. He hasn't got it. He's going to get it later on. And look at the source of all of this, which is Amira Lehekdesh. That's a kinyan dibur, where by speaking you can make a kinyan when you give something to the Beis Hamikdash. And even there, you can't do it if the object that you're giving to the Beis Hamikdash is not in your rishus, it's not under your control. You can't give the Beis Hamikdash something which you don't have possession of. So how can you give this object to Reuven if you don't have possession of it? It's a halva'ah. That's the halacha b'loitama. So understanding the difference between this. So here's the difference. If we were to ask, in the case of pikadon, we would be asking, what would the question be? How does this work? That's not an intelligent question. How does this work? The answer is the Chachomim decreed it. That's how it works. It works because it works. It's like a lama kacha, as the children say. But by halvo, it's not like that. By halvo, the question is much more intelligent. This is a lomdisha question. I understand that Chachomim said that if ma'amad shloshtan, if all three are present, you can instruct the other person to give it to Reuven. I get it. But in the case of halva'ah, the other person doesn't have possession of the object. And we learn from Kodshim that when you're makdish something you don't have possession of, even though speech is a valid kinyan, lack of possession interferes with the kinyan and doesn't allow the kinyan to take place. So how does the kinyan take place here? This is not a how does it work. This is a how could it possibly work. And that's the difference between a good question and a weak question. How does it work? Look up the instruction manual. How does it work? Check up on the internet. I don't know how it works. How does the light work? How does the computer work? Look it up. Not a good question. But how could it possibly work? How come the light is on when there's no electricity? That's an interesting question. That's a good question. How does Pikodon work? That's no question. Pikodon works because the Chazal said it works. How does Halva work? There's no Rishus. You don't have possession. If you don't have possession, how can it work? That's a valid question. So when we ask a question, it's really important. That's the lomdus of a question. It's really important to back the question up with why it's a question. Don't just ask a question. If you're asking a question, you ask the question and you back it up with, and the reason this is a question is because there's something that makes it impossible to understand, and we need to resolve that conflict of ideas. And only once we've resolved the conflict can we really understand them. That's a powerful question, as the Ktsos HaChoshen explains to us in the Sugya of Ma'amad Shloshtam.